Tuesday, May 9th, 2006. And I have 6:13 p.m. Councilwoman Bell is present, Councilman Hodge, Vice Mayor Losner, Councilwoman Wallman, Councilwoman Garner, and Councilman Porter. Item 2A, the approval of April 25th, 2006 minutes of the Committee of the Whole. Is there a motion for approval? Moved by Councilman Hodge, is there a second by Councilwoman Bell. Any questions on the minutes? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item 2C is the amendment of Chapter 7, Miscellaneous Regulation of City Codes, Tab 3. Is this Councilwoman Garner's? Tab 2? Tab G. Did I miss B? Oh, I'm sorry. Tab 2 is Rodriguez and Quiroga, Professional Service Amendment.
Mr. Mayor and Council, it's staff's recommendation that Council approve this professional services agreement with Rodriguez and Quiroga for the services of design, bidding, and construction administration as it relates to the building of our new City Hall. As you'll recall, they were the firm that did the initial study for site planning and also did the programming work. And subsequently were approved to represent us in these services here, and this is the agreement.
I'll move it, Mayor.
What's the cost agreement? It was open-ended?
Say that again, sir?
Any estimated costs?
They estimated the construction cost at $14 million. Their cost is $1,365,000 for the services.
It's been properly moved and second.
Was it seconded? I'll second it.
Vice Mayor seconded.
No, I made a motion.
Vice Mayor moved and Ms. Wallman second. Any additional questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Now, item 2C is the amendment of Chapter 17, Miscellaneous Regulation of City Codes, Tab 3.
Mr. Mayor and Council, this is a recommendation by staff that we amend Chapter 17, Miscellaneous Regulations in regards to landscape maintenance that is near or entangled in our power lines or poles, and it really gives us a vehicle to get to cause residents to, if they have a situation in which they allow their trees, they plant trees or allow their vegetation to interfere with the lines, the energized lines, that we can require them to cut those back. And it's really out of the hurricane scenario, the tree cutting on private property.
I have a question.
Ms. Wallman?
Mr. Ivey, does that mean that we'll send down a notice to them and tell them their responsibilities, and then they'll be fined if they don't adhere to the... Okay, because I wasn't sure how the penalty would be, or...
Well, it's 7 days. It's code enforcement oriented. 7 days to... They'll be given a notice in 7 days to get something done, and we can fine in regards to that, right, to code enforcement.
The main way that the ordinance is intended, again, these ordinances are written to try to get compliance. So the way the ordinance is written is we give them 7 days notice. If they don't complete it within 7 days, the city has the ability to go in and trim it and lien their property.
And my next question is, do we know what kind of cost that's going to be in case it does happen? Because I anticipate that happening a lot.
Well, I think no, we don't. I think it's going to be dependent upon what the what the issue is.
Would we do that, or would we contract it out?
I'm sorry?
Would we do that, or would we contract it out?
Oh, we'd probably have Asplund to do it for us, to go and cut. They cut now for us in our areas.
Okay. Thank you.
I know at the legislative level there was a lot of discussion of billboards and the interference of billboards on power lines, and that the cities could not really do anything about it. Does this did that pass, one, and does this have any impact at all on it?
This wasn't designed for that. There's specifically vegetation in or near our energized lines that when you have the hurricane and their vegetation gets in, it causes the lines to go down, mainly big trees and those kinds of things. But the billboard was, what I recall on that one, and I don't know if I have all of it, was the trees mainly in front. They allowed what was there to stay there, but no new trees to be planted in front, something.
Right, that legislation did pass, which prevented cities from planting trees in front of billboards. That's at least from the summaries that I've read. I haven't seen the legislation, but I did see that bill.
Can I ask a question, Mayor?
Ms. Bell, Mr. Hodge, and then Mr. Porter.
Thank you. Mr. Ivey, I would imagine after reading this is not meant in any way, shape, or form to be punitive. This is simply meant to be preventative, to save the city and its residents from countless lost hours of lost electricity, to properly maintain the area, to keep it safer for the residents. I mean, I think this is a fair, common sense legislation. There are going to be people who are going to, whether they're elderly or whatever, who are going to need help, who may have to hire somebody to come out and cut it. But this is, in my estimation after reading this is going to be overall the best thing for the residents of the city of Homestead. If it's a big overgrown tree that's going to knock some poles and some lines down, it's going to cause this particular grid to be out for days. I think it's just I think it's good common sense, and that we need to be very proactive right now for the future hurricane season. And I think this is just really, quite frankly, a small step in the right direction. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Hodge?
Thank you, Mayor. Right after the last hurricane season, there was some issues that I brought up, and one of the things was to deal with the undergrounding of power lines, and I think I was maybe misunderstood a little bit of maybe trying to underground the whole city like at one time, but along these same lines is kind of what I was thinking of with the new infill development, was to not underground that entire street or the main poles, but as the infill development is being built and created, if they buy a lot and they're putting a house on that lot, to have that service line took down that pole across the street and attached to that house, and that will then prevent the new developments coming online in that perspective. And as we do upgrades and changes, then the city can slowly develop and make the changes to the existing properties along the way. So that way it's saving us cost, and it may be a longer period, a longer time of doing that. But at some point, at least all the service lines would be under, because if you look at a lot of the damage, majority of it comes from the service lines and not the main lines that's running up and down the streets. It is the vegetations and the trees that are next to the building, the service lines, and knocking and dragging poles down. So, although I do think it's good legislation, I do want to add that, in there for that purpose, because it's good to cut back, but if those lines are not there in the first place, we can start implementing that, then we will make it even safer for the community, because you understand what I'm saying, and I hope that we will maybe take a good look and add that to this as well, because it's something that we can do, and again, it's very inexpensive to do it at that rate.
Staff can look at it, but it's really beyond the scope of this ordinance. It would have to come back as a separate ordinance, because this one just deals with trimming of landscaping, and that would deal with underground utilities. So staff could look at it and bring it back to a COW as a separate ordinance after they look at it.
We haven't been proactive at that as of yet. We've been looking at it and waiting, kind of seeing what's going on, kind of on a broader scale for this undergrounding and what they're talking about now with FP&L. But we've had some conversations about it, and there's a lot of pros and cons both ways, so we'll continue to look at that.
Okay. Well, again, I'm not talking about the transmission lines. Right. I'm talking the lines that's crossing the streets. The ones that's coming off the poles to the house. Those are the main ones, because those are the ones that's causing most of the issues.
we'll look at that when I get back.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Porter?
From a question would be in my mind, would you mail the form to the resident of the home if they're a renter? Would they then in fact be able to send it to the owner?
The ordinance applies to the property owner, the person owning or controlling such real property. So
that may not be the person that lives in the home.
it may not be if it's a rental.
So if the notice goes to the home and the renter doesn't forward it to the owner, how does that
At that point, I don't think it would be proper. We're going to make sure that these notices go to the proper people, not to the rent. If it's a renter, that's not, we would send it to the owner. And if it's obviously it's owner occupied, we send it to the owner at the house. But we're going to have to make sure, if we intend to do this, that we properly notify the responsible parties.
We envision this to be handled just like code enforcement,
like code enforcement?
and there'll have to be some research on the ownership of the property.
Right.
Utility guys would be identifying the problems.
No, this will be, code enforcement will be enforcing these.
When? between what?
When they're reported, probably, you know.
Wouldn't you want some notification coming from the utility guys that may be up and about looking at that?
Sure, they can let us know, and then code enforcement can come out. It's like the policeman sees something, calls code enforcement.
But it's still a function that it's going to come through code enforcement.
Yeah, it's already set up for that kind of thing, to notice people, so.
My only concern was mailing it to a homeowner, mailing to a renter who doesn't own the home and then, causing a whole bunch of trouble for us.
Right.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Any other questions?
I could, excuse me, Mayor, I could just see Chief Roll over there. Do you have enough people to do this?
No, he doesn't.
I just want it on the record.
I'm not sure that once this program is going to be a real intense situation. I think you need to send out warnings, ask people to do something before you take any kind of enforcement action, make them aware of it, why it's important, and then there'll be some issues there, but I don't anticipate tons of them. I hope I'm not wrong.
No other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Just one more thing. Could we do some type of brochure pamphlet and send it through the electric bills, explaining it and making people well aware? And I guess we could do it along with, I think, the hurricane preparedness notifications that we. Sure. Thanks. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
She said, I'll make the motion. She said we didn't make a motion.
Moved by Mr. Porter, who's second?
I'll second it.
Second by Ms. Garner. Okay, thank you. Item 2D is amendment of section 22.5, 135, termination benefits, tab 4.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and Council, this was somewhat of a house cleaning clarification issue dealing with the pension board, General Employees Pension Plan, in which at one point we had members of the hospital that were on our pension fund. And there was a question coming up about when they could collect money, when they vested, and when they would be able to collect retirement money. I think the big item here was that it clarified that if you had been with the city through the hospital, and there's only about 3 employees that this impacts, I'm told. If you've been there 6 years, less than 10 years rather, less than 10 years, you cannot collect until age 65. If you've been there more than 10 years, you can collect at age 55, but you would have to take the normal reduction of 2% a year until you hit that point where your age and time qualify. If it does not at 55.
I'll move it.
Moved by Councilwoman Bell, second by Councilman Hodge. Any questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item 2E is surplus items and resolutions, tab 5.
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Porter, second by
Me.
Ms. Wallman. Questions on surplus items? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 3, City Code, Councilwoman Garner.
Thank you, Mayor. This is continuing from the discussion we had at the last council meeting regarding our parking requirements in the RTH townhouse and RCH cluster home zoning districts. We discussed it a little bit last council meeting, and I wanted to get a little more in depth, and it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. Our current code right now for a townhouse or cluster home requires that parking spaces must be provided for by either an attached garage or commonly owned and maintained covered off-street parking structure. And this is 2 spaces that it requires. Now, specifically, I think a garage is necessary. If you look at our PUD code, which we were going to try to follow, it says garage or storage. Well, PUD provides for additional flexibility that a regular townhome plan does not. So, therefore, I don't think it should have the flexibility of saying or. It should be garage and storage. And the parking spaces really should depend on how many units are in the townhome or cluster home. So that for that part, we followed the PUD code, which said if you had 1 to 2 bedrooms, you need 2 parking spaces. 3 to 4 bedrooms was 3 parking spaces, and 5 bedrooms or more was 4 parking spaces, just to make sure that there were enough spaces for whatever size unit it was. And attached, you have a couple examples. One of my major concerns was possibly, for example, in the northwest section, you could have infill lots that are big enough for a townhome. I don't know what's going to happen with the moratorium, but if you did have a property that did allow townhomes or cluster homes, and you required 2 parking spaces that had to be covered parking, they're going to want to make that a garage because they're not going to want to build separate parking structures within 50 feet of the unit. So they're going to put a 2-car garage, and with the actual square footage, that might get you up to a 3-story building. Now, if that's close to single-family housing, I'm not sure that you want townhomes that are 3 stories high close to residential, single-family residential. So we're just trying to be cautious of what we do here, but make it strict enough so that it does require a garage. And the developers haven't argued with that one because they all tell me they need a garage. And that's the gist of it. If there's any questions.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Bell.
Councilwoman Gardner, excuse me because I just got this and I was trying to skim over this very quickly. Now, the way I'm reading this, they're going to be required to have at least a 1-car garage and a storage unit, or?
Yes, ma'am. I believe it should say and.
Okay. It says it in the background. I was just looking for it in the body of the document.
Right, and I know it might have been confusing because at the council meeting it said or, right. That's because it followed the PUD code. But PUDs have other options. You know, this needs to be stricter because it's just a townhome. There's no other give and take as there is with PUDs. And so it should be and.
Okay, good.
It appears that they on the packet have attached the old one,
right,
as well as the new one, and the new one says and.
Yes, it should read and. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, also, since it says a minimum of a 1-car garage, as the unit gets larger, depending on where it is, does it increase to a 2-car garage based on the size of the home, or is it just simply minimum 1-car garage and storage?
It is minimum 1-car garage and storage, but depending on how large the unit gets, say, you know, if you just have a 2-bedroom,
right,
and you have a garage and a pad in front of it, that would be okay.
Sure.
But if you move up to, say, a 3 to 4 bedroom, then you have the option of putting that as a garage. A garage could be 2 spaces, and then 2 spaces in front of it. The pad in front of it would be 4 spaces. You would be okay there. But it just depends on how many bedrooms there are.
Okay, that's exactly what
And you have the option of making it a garage or putting the parking somewhere else, but you have to have that many spaces.
Very good. And I recognize, too, that the developers have an easier time selling it if it has a garage. People want a garage.
Correct. Plus, then they have more storage room.
Right, well, absolutely. Okay, that really satisfies my concerns, because I wanted to make sure it was the garage and the storage space.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Gardner?
Mr. Rosen? Vice Mayor?
Thank you. This is a lot better than I think the draft that we saw. If anything else, it enhances the parking requirements from what we had in the prior ordinance.
Correct.
One thing I want to just
to clarify, I'm looking at the RTH Townhome District. I think to take a step further from Ms. Bell's question to make sure we all understand this, I think it says you shall have at least a one-car garage. But if it's a three-bedroom, I think this says you shall have a one-car garage and a minimum of 3 parking spaces in addition to the garage. Is that what's intended here? It says the minimum off-street parking. Is the garage included in the off-street parking? Okay. So you have a garage plus 2 if you had a 3-bedroom. Correct. Now, by the way, I'll direct this to Mr. Chandra. In the prior ordinance, there was very detailed as to the size of the pads and parking spaces that were not within a garage and how they were designed and so forth. Here we distilled it down to compliance with urban design standards. Are we all comfortable that the urban design standards aren't going to result in driveways that are either too short or too narrow? Because we do have these, and we could ride around and find any number of examples of that now, where cars are pulled all the way up to the garage and their bumpers are hanging out into the sidewalk or into the swale area. So our urban design guideline is going to cover those issues without it being explicitly in the ordinance?
It'll be covered in 3 different ways, Mr. Lasner. First, in the urban design guidelines. Secondly, when it's in a PUD, which is not here, but just continue with it, the staff looks at it specifically and makes sure that the parking spaces are as big as they need to be. We need to be in the RTH and the RCH when it's not in a PUD. Another portion of the staff will look at exactly the same thing to make sure there is enough space for each. We're not just going to say, give me a parking space and make the parking space 8 feet by 16 and it doesn't fit.
But I guess it goes back to that, the famous F word, flexibility, that depending on the configuration of the lot and depth and so forth and the facade of the building, what may be acceptable on one elevation may not be in another.
From the standpoint of what it may look like, yes, sir, but from the standpoint of the size, there is a minimum size period. It can't be, again, like I said before, it can't be an 8 by 16 space, regardless of where it is, because it's not going to cover a car. So the space, regardless of where it is, has to be essentially the 9 by 19 we've been using.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you. Ms. Garner.
Any additional comments, questions?
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Moved by the mayor, second by Councilwoman Waldman. Any additional comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Before we go, are the elevations that are attached to this package, are they of any relevance to this, or are they a mistake?
No, they have relevance in the sense that they show you, what we did here is we put together at Ms. Garner's request the 4 that are in right now to look at. And you can see one of those happens to be the 3-story version she's talking about, where now by having the 1, the designer may well be able to do it in a 2-story by just rearranging the space. You also have one in here which is a 2-car garage with the urban design coming in from the garage behind, and that applicant has told us that even with this change, they believe that's a good model to use and they will go forward. So you will have a number that have the 2-car garages as well.
Thank you.
Finance Committee, Councilwoman Bell.
Item 4A, purchase and installation of security system and resolution, tab 6.
Mrs. Bell, Councilwoman Bell, and Mayor and Council. Staff's recommendation to purchase and install perimeter security equipment, which is made by Resco Technology at the Homestead Energy Services power plant facility. We're in the process of upgrading all our security. We've done it for the water treatment areas, doing it for 6th Avenue areas, and we're continuing to improve our security setup as we move through now to the power plant. And these are perimeter beams. They are sole sourced.
I'll move the recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any comments or questions from council? Any comments or questions from the audience? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the ayes carry. Item 4B, Washington Avenue Parking Lot Project, tab 7.
Okay, this is a bid award for parking lot project on Washington Avenue. It was the recommendation of the committee that reviewed the bids, that the bid be awarded to Atlantic Civil as the lowest, I think the operative word here for the committee was responsible bidder for the construction of the city-owned parking lot located at 1 Washington Avenue. Now, there's as sometimes happens with the story behind all this. Atlantic Civil is the second lowest bidder. The lowest bidder is Redland Construction, and it's low bid by $28,876.18. However, in light of our situation with Redland, we felt that we should not award the project to Redland since we have an ongoing legal issue with Redland from another project. So we had suggested to go to the second bidder, which happened to be Atlantic Civil.
I'll entertain a motion.
Can you ask a question, please?
Comment, question from Councilman Porter?
So, because of the impending litigation, it's deemed that he's not responsible, a responsive bidder?
Well, I think when we go in there and you look at our bid package, it has the verbiage for determining some of that, but I think in the inclusion of that is if we have a job where he was not responsible, or the vendor was not responsible in the performance of their duties, that could be defined or used as a criteria for determining responsible bidder, and that's one of the criteria used.
Has there been instances where the contractor has not performed in the past the proper types of bids, or is there any circumstance where he's not done his job as requested by the city?
This the
lowest bidder, the one that bid the lowest at this point.
Well, we have the obvious one, the one that's facing us right now. Other than that, I don't recall any jobs in which we've had any serious altercations or anything.
Have we had any jobs where the second lowest bidder has had any issues with the city?
I have to defer, Brian, if you recall of any. There usually is
Kurt, to answer your question, not that I recollect either as far as that goes.
That the cities had.
Any further questions or comments from council?
Is there legal, I know the Vice Mayor had asked that we look into whether we could restrict someone from doing any further business as a result of any pending litigation.
What we did
can we do that?
on this particular bid document, there was language that said the city may consider any evidence available regarding the financial, technical, or other qualifications and abilities of the bidder, including past performance, experience with the city in making the award in the best interest of the city. So this particular bid, it's slightly a different answer to your question, but with respect to this bid, there was language included in the bid that would allow the city to look at past performance that the city has with this contractor in making its award.
I have a question, Ms. Bell.
Councilwoman Waldman?
Mr. Ivey, isn't it true that, I remember that the principals of Atlantic Civil sued the city? And
we've been threatened with it?
That's true. That was over the fill pit issue about not bidding it out. And that was their claim.
Comment? If that's true, I don't agree with I'm not sure that I agree with the policy issue of saying that no one suing us can be put in a bid, because if that's true and Atlantic Civil sued us previously, they wouldn't be able to bid on this now. I don't know that that's a policy issue that I want to make in the future, and I'm not sure that's something that I want to do right now. $28,000 is a lot of money, and I don't think that I see them as two separate issues. I've never seen a problem with the construction coming from that company. We sat in a meeting before, and Atlantic Civil said that they were going to sue us that night too, so I'm really not scared of any of their lawsuits.
Comment? Anybody else?
have a question.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
That's for Richard. I think you may have answered this, I just want to be real clear. Responsible, as it's contained in this bid package, can have a broad definition going into performance of all other situations. Okay. I just want to point out that the question, and maybe under my business later we'll possibly explore it further or see what the attorneys have talked about. I want to be real clear that I'm not talking about past or threatened lawsuits precluding somebody from being a successful bidder with the city. I'm talking about current and active. I mean, there are a lot of people in business who have had prior issues and have gotten beyond them and moved on and become the best of friends and partners. My concern was I don't really know what kind of message that sends when you get into bed business-wise with somebody who's suing you on a prior deal. So I don't want to confuse that issue with what we're doing here. Mine was geared toward current litigation.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to clarify what the staff recommendation is because, again, I don't know how the vote's going to go, but I just want to be clear about what the staff recommendation was. Staff recommendation, the issue you raised with respect to people litigating with the city is different from the issue that the staff is dealing with. And we can have a discussion. We're actually in the process of researching it, and we'll get back to you on that issue. What the staff is saying, and this is absolutely within the discretion of the commission to go any way that they want it, is that we have had, and they're reviewing the history that Redland has had with the city and performing on a contract that we had with them, and they're relying not on the lawsuit. They're relying on the performance under that contract. Now, it's up to you as to whether you think that should be taken into effect or not, but I wanted to be clear that the staff's recommendation doesn't deal with the lawsuits. And what it deals with is the performance, and then again, if you think that's irrelevant, then you should vote one way. If not, then you can vote the other way. But it's the performance that the staff was concerned about.
Thank you. I would like to make a comment on this. I'm very concerned. I'm kind of surprised, too. We're not talking about not awarding a bid because of a past lawsuit or a perceived lawsuit. We're talking about very bad behavior, and that person is currently suing us right now for almost $10 million. I think it would be absurd to give a contract to somebody who's currently suing us for $10 million who has performed very badly on a previous contract. We're not talking about a simple third-party lawsuit or whatever, something in the past. We're talking about right now. And I, as a finance chair, cannot even perceive or conceive that we would be willing to even consider negotiating with anybody who's suing us for $10 million when they're the ones who have defaulted on the contract and performed very badly. I'm kind of baffled sitting here right now, if you will, and whomever the following bidder is, the second place bidder, whomever that would be, I mean, $28,000 in the scheme of things, and then how do you look when you go to court and you're challenging a lawsuit of $10 million, but by the way, we just gave them another contract. Come on, guys. So that's my comment on the record. Councilman Hodge.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman Bell. I guess my question is for the attorney, because I want to be clear. It's so easy to confuse me, you know. And I just want to make sure that I'm clear and thinking clearly here. You're saying what staff is looking at, and I guess staff could speak for themselves as well, but what staff is looking at is not the litigation that we're currently up against, but yet completely looking at contract performance, past history contract performance with the city. So the lawsuit has, in other words, I could just forget about the lawsuits and think about the history that this company has had with the city and how they performed with the city, and that's solely what I should be basing my decision on.
Yeah. First of all, so that you don't think that I don't want you to feel like I'm advocating this one way or the other. What I'm trying to do is for the record, because this is a contentious issue, I'm trying to be very clear as to what the staff recommendation was based on. As my understanding was, it was based on the second thing that you said, which was how the low bidder performed under the contract it had with the city, and the fact that they sued us or didn't sue us wasn't really what the staff was looking at. It was basically, I guess, the reasons for the underlying termination of the original contract because of the problems with the performance that they were looking at as opposed to the lawsuits. That's what the distinction I was trying to draw.
Okay, so if we've had, say, 10 contracts with Redland, and they messed up on one or two, I need to look at that as
if we have 10 contracts on them and they messed up on one or two, and you're comfortable that they can do a good job on this, then there's nothing that would prevent you from awarding the contract to them. If you feel that their past performance could affect the way they do this job, then you can pass them over. But that you asked exactly the right question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask one question too, please? Mr. Chairman, excuse me.
Councilman Porter.
You know, we've had relationships where we've been in contracts with the second lowest bidder. The cul-de-sac was the one where, if I remember correctly, they were the lowest bidder, and we had problems in the past with change orders and litigation when it came to them doing projects for the city. Correct or incorrect, Kurt?
Well, I don't remember. I know that there was something with a cul-de-sac. I don't remember the outcome of whether we had a problem with the developer. I don't remember the details of it at this point. On the cul-de-sac, you may have recalled.
But if I remember correctly, you know, we had numerous issues where bids were let and change orders. Brian, change orders were a necessity. That particular issue was one. I remember specifically the council said we would go with that, but there would be no change orders allowed. And if I was told correctly that they had attempted to do a change order, and that was always a problem.
On the cul-de-sac, actually, Councilman Porter, I don't have recollection on that project. Actually, Charles Janis was working on that project at that time, so I'm sorry I don't have that information.
Okay, but the point is that no one, I mean, I've been here 9 years on the council, so there have been problems. If there's problems with one, there's problems with both when it comes to performance. I just want to be clear and want to be on the record that there have been problems with Atlantic Civil in construction projects that we had. I remember. So, you know, it wasn't a unanimous vote when it came before the committee. There was some dissension on the committee that that the lowest bidder was a responsible bidder. And obviously, as a council, the council has authority to go with the highest bidder or the lowest bidder, depending upon its own discretion. And clearly, the committee was not 100%. You know, the construction projects that I'm thinking about that Redmond have been done properly. There is confusion, and there is a huge question with regards to the quarry, the rock pit, and that's yet to be decided. I just have concerns with, you know, both companies, if you want to put it that way. If we've had problems with one, we've had problems with both. Historically, that is the truth. So, to say that, to leapfrog the lowest bidder to go to the second lowest bidder that we've had problems with too in the past, kind of sticks in my craw a little bit. Throw the whole thing out and start over again. You know, that's an option too. But I just want to be clear that historically we've had problems with both. If that's the case, we've had problems with both contractors. So, be that what it may. But I think the council at any given point in time has the authority to do with these bids whatever it feels necessary in the best interest of the city.
Correct.
So, if there's some dissension amongst the council as to what to do, we can start over again and exclude the two that are right now the current two lowest bidders. It's going to cost us a bunch of money.
That's true.
Thank you.
Councilman Porter, how many years ago are you referencing the second bidder to? I'm curious. It really predates me.
Well, it's been, what, Mayor, 4 years, 5 years? I can't remember the cul-de-sac, where it had the cul-de-sac that was sinking.
It's about 5 years ago.
5 years?
Yeah, I just want to say, when that project was done, I was the Public Works Director, so if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
What the question is...
There was some considerable concern.
Mr. Shahada, do you have a history on that then? For clarification, do you know anything about that?
I have to walk a fine line here. With that construction project, Atlantic Civil were the lowest bidder. I don't know if they were Atlantic Civil then. I think they were Atlantic Civil, just became Atlantic Civil. They were the lowest bidder, and I think there was a concern from council about the history of Atlantic Civil with change orders and stuff. But finally, council approved the project. Was $75,000 in that neighborhood. The project was constructed. There was a change order submitted to us, and we had a counter claim against them. So their change order and our counter claim canceled each other. So the project was done for the bid amount.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, we need Vice Mayor Losner.
Thank you. Let's assume it was Atlantic Civil that you had problems with on the cul-de-sac project, and I think that predates my time here. Let's assume for a minute it was Atlantic Civil that there were those issues with. Has Atlantic Civil been awarded any city work since that time? As you recall?
To the best of my knowledge, they were not awarded any work directly from the city.
I don't think the function of not being the low bidder.
That's exactly right.
Not due to responsibility issues. Thank you. Thank you.
As I look at this, there's a difference. Like I said, the next bidder is quite a bit different. So this council needs to either we need to have a motion to move this and pass it or defeat it. Yes, ma'am.
Let me ask a couple of questions on this. Is the work that required for this project have any similarity to what's being done at the field?
No.
Whole different project?
Correct.
If we award it to the low bidder, would the staff have a problem with Redland completing this task, being that it was unrelated to what we're doing out there at the pit?
Well,
I assume he met all the bid specifications. Because, you know, we need to be honest with ourselves. We know that this whole lawsuit is clouding all of our judgment as to whether we should move forward on the low bid or we should go with Atlantic Civil. My concern is, do staff feel comfortable in awarding this to the low bidder based on past performance?
Kurt, if I may.
well, you can chip in there. I'll say, I'll stick by my recommendation on this, not because necessarily the lawsuit. I think what was done at the fill pit was egregious. I think that it was done purposeful. I think that, and that's the latest experience I've had with that contractor. Could that contractor do the job? Absolutely. They've done several jobs in the city. They've done a good job and came in on budget and have done a number of jobs. So really the capability of them doing the job and doing a good job is not necessarily, you know, my position on that. My position is just that how the conduct was in the last, or really the existing almost scenario we got going with the fill pit was very egregious to the city, and I got a problem with that personally. But we take our orders. We're ready, whatever council's wishes are.
Any further comments from council?
If I may, the question was raised about going out and rebidding. A couple of issues there. We have grant funds in this project from two different sources. both of those grants expire late this year. And we would have to go to both of those granting sources and request extensions of the grant. One of them, I don't think that would be that big a problem because we have not requested any extensions prior to this. The other one, we have had to request extensions because part of the money came from moving it out of the old transit village into this project, and then because of the issues with the arsenic in the ground delaying the planning of it, we've had to request a couple of more extensions. How they would react to another extension, I do not know, but I suspect they would at least raise eyebrows. And we are in the process of asking them to let us move some money that we have for 2007, 2008 from working on Parkway to working on Washington, since Parkway there is probably going to go away as part of City Hall construction. And while I'm trying to ask them to move money from one place to another, I do not want to be embroiled with them and asking them for another extension on a different grant. So taking it back out to bid and hoping we're going to get a different result may have some unintended consequences that we may not like. I will mirror what Kurt said. Both of them have done apparently quality work based on their references. That really wasn't an issue in making a decision by the committee.
Richard, I think my real issue is if we award it to the low bidder, will it have any impact at all on the pending lawsuit against Redlet in terms of our ability to represent the city and win the case?
We've discussed that internally, and if you're going to make a motion one way or another, I was going to suggest that the motion be conditioned upon a written stipulation between the low bidder and the city that the fact that we're awarding this bid would not appear in the lawsuit, would not be used in any way, and it would be, I would draft it, and I'd have Joe look at it and make sure that we wouldn't be prejudiced, so we would protect ourselves in that way.
Okay.
Any further comment or questions from council? I'll move the recommendation.
Yes, sir. Recommendation of the second bidder.
Yes. Staff's recommendation. I'm moving staff's recommendation.
Been moved by the chair.
I'll second.
Second by Vice Mayor. Any additional questions?
One question.
Mr. Porter.
When we were in litigation with Tampa Armature and Works, because of a misinterpretation of the contract, did we continue to do business with them while we were in litigation?
TAW.
Tampa Armature and Works, TAW.
I think we were pretty much, we've done business with them since, but I think at that time it was the issue of damages that was being, they'd completed the work but liquidated damages because they went over time, and that's what we were in the litigation with them for.
But I don't know whether we awarded a contract to them during the time that litigation was pending.
That would be no. We did not. Actually, we did not have any opportunity for any bids to accept any bids for them for that.
Okay, thank you.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Vice Mayor Losner?
Yes.
Councilman Porter?
No.
Councilman Hodge?
No.
Councilwoman Garner?
No.
Councilwoman Waldman?
No.
Councilwoman Bell?
Yes.
Mayor Warren?
No.
Motion
I'm
dies.
moving to go with the lowest bidder, Redland Construction,
Subject to us
subject to your recommendation with the additional verbiage.
I'll second that motion.
Moved by Mr. Porter, second by Ms. Garner. Any further discussion on this issue?
Question for the attorney.
Mr. Losner.
What if in the context of the litigation you can't agree on the language of the stipulation? Do we need to have an alternate? If we have to come back, we can't just default to the next bidder. by any action here tonight?
I think that could be your motion. I think your motion could be award the bid to them, and then if we're unable to agree upon language satisfactory to the city attorneys that protects the city, that it would go to the second bidder.
That's fine. That's fine, Mayor.
If I may,
It's fine, include that language in the motion?
if I may, Mr. Chairman, because time is of the essence, if we have grants involved, might we also put a date certain by which agreement must be made, or then we move to the second bidder, so that this doesn't stretch on interminably?
Good idea. Very good idea. I think we should say 7, or 5 working days. That's all. I mean, it's not all that complicated.
We have Pinky in the audience. Pinky, do you want to comment on? Do you have any problem with this language?
I don't have any problem with any stipulations. I can't foresee any problems with anything like that.
Could we get it done in the next 3 to 5 days?
No problem. We'll expect the city attorney's going to draft it and send it to us, yes.
Mayor Warren? I want to state that I sit here and I just have to say again, nothing ceases to amaze me sitting on this city council. This certainly, and I'm going to go on a limb and say it, this surely looks like the good old boy network, where once again we go against staff recommendation that makes just common sense to negotiate any contract with somebody who is currently, right now, in default, currently has moved filled off-site out of the DRI for over 6 years, stored contaminants on the city's site after being told no, over-digging 30 feet deep, surveys that are falsified going before Durham that our city engineers signed off on, that we are agreeing tonight to negotiate with that company. I want that on record, as I have stated. I'm appalled at the council's behavior. It's just not a simple difference of opinion. I can deal with that all day long. I have no problem being outvoted on simple difference of opinion. This is a moral issue. A moral issue. And I will stand on record saying I'm appalled.
Any other comments? We voted on it. Roll call? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Vice Mayor Losner?
No.
Councilman Porter?
Yes.
Councilman Hodge?
Yes.
Councilwoman Garner?
Yes.
Councilwoman Waldman?
Yes.
Councilwoman Bell?
Absolutely not.
Mayor Warren?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item 4C is the Ivy Substation Relay Protection Retrofit Project.
I believe it's still my committee, Mayor. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Item 4C, Ivy Substation Relay Protection Retrofit Project, tab 8. Mr. Manager?
Yes, Councilwoman, Mayor, and Council. The next 3 items deal with electric utility contracts and purchases, and I'm going to let Greg present those. There's 3 of these, the next 3. Oh, well, yeah. Oh, yeah, next 2, I'm sorry, next 2. The next 2 items.
B and C.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor and City Council, this is a recommendation by staff to award the replacement of the Ivy Substation Relay Protection retrofit. This is distribution relay protection on our feeder breakers to upgrade from the older technology to a new microprocessor technology, which will enhance the reliability and safety of the distribution circuits. We're awarding to the low bidder Wesco Distribution. Any questions?
I'll entertain a motion to approve.
We'll move it.
It's been properly moved by Vice Mayor Losner,
Second motion.
Seconded by the mayor. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. The ayes carry. Item 4D.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, this is a recommendation by staff to award the bid to the sole bidder, Waukesha Electric Systems, for the purposes of establishing a contract for full breaker maintenance and oil reconditioning for the McGraw and Edison circuit breakers at the Lucy substation, 145 kV class, currently in service. There was two options to the bid. Option one was for the complete changing of the oil and including maintenance of the breakers. Option number two was just the reclamation of the oil or reprocessing of the oil, and staff has chosen option two for reclamation.
It's been properly moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any comments or questions from council? All in favor say aye. Aye. The ayes carry.
Enrollment number 5, Public Safety Committee, Councilman Porter.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I was looking at the wrong agenda here. Substation. I was looking for substation. Yeah, I see it now. I'm sorry. I was looking at the old. Well, this is a grant that we can't refuse because we've been using it. It works for us. Chief, you want to say anything, or Mr. Ivey?
I'd make a few comments here. This is an extension of an already existing grant that we have. It funds 2 case managers for SOS. It's a $61,780.60 grant extension. Normally, sometime toward the end of the year, if they have extra money and they like your program, and you can occasionally get additional monies, and that's what this represents here.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is any discussion? All in favor? Yes, it carries. I heard no no's. That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any business for the committee of the whole, Mr. Porter?
No, sir.
Ms. Warman?
No, sir.
Vice Mayor?
A couple of quick questions, if I might, since tonight was bid night. Kurt, I had an inquiry recently from someone locally who's in the air conditioning business. And my question is what's typically the lead time to the time an invitation to bid goes out and the deadline? There seemed to be some concern locally that at least they didn't receive notice of the bid until a time frame where it was almost impossible to respond.
We just awarded that, so it may be fresh. I don't know, Brian. Yes, but
I can address that. Mr. Welsner, the bid you're talking about, that actually the local people who depend on the faxes did not receive that bid notice in a timely fashion, and it was because they had equipment failure on the fax system that went out. So although it was posted in 2 journals, it was sent out via demand star on the internet, is the fax system did not post those bids in a timely manner. It's the first time that it ever happened.
So the alternative then to give the locals an equal opportunity with it to delay the whole bid or rebid the whole package, but we chose not to do that.
Exactly.
And I'll pass that along. I just wanted to be sure that just wasn't a routine short time frame that really precluded a lot of the small local guys from perhaps responding and having the opportunity to win the bid.
No,
so
sir.
I appreciate it. That's just a one-time odd situation.
Yes.
Secondly, in light of what transpired tonight, again, I think I've clarified where I wanted Richard to go.
Yeah, actually what we're doing...
Well, I was going to ask if in light, does the council want you to spend any more time looking at that? Actually, or are we happy awarding bids to people who are in litigation?
But we did so that we would not be spending time on... The last councilman, you directed Kurt to sort of speak with other jurisdictions as to what they were doing. So he has Brian doing a survey, which will be presented at a future meeting as to what other jurisdictions are doing with that issue.
Mr. Hodge?
No, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Bell?
Oh, I have plenty to say, but I think I'll quit where I was. Thank you.
Okay. I have anything. Mr. Manager?
Nothing, Mayor.
Mr. Weiss?
I was told that it's very bad for the attorney to keep saying I have no report. I just want to tell you that we're working hard. I was with someone from another city, and they said, well, the city attorney always had no report. Why wasn't he doing anything? Well, I want to tell you that we're working hard. The cases are progressing well. Anytime we need an executive session, we'll ask for one, and that we're dealing with a lot of different issues with your staff.
Thank you, sir.
Don't feel bad, Richard.
Meeting is adjourned.